our next speaker, who made the effort to join us all the way from Cape Town to come and join us here in person and make her delivery in person. She has over 10 years of experience working in digital news media in South Africa. And she is currently working with journalists, or currently works with journalists and editors in building loyal and engaged audiences. She also holds a doctorate in philosophy in the area of political communication. I would like to welcome Alet to join us on stage for the masterclass presentation.
For our readers, a combination of investigations, news, analysis, and opinions.
We believe readers come to us because they know that we speak truth to power.
In 2022, Daily Maverick's audience grew to 10 million monthly unique users.
We're probably best known for our work on the Gupta leaks. Our team got a hold of a trove of millions of emails that essentially exposed government corruption at the highest levels. The Gupta leaks really drove home the role journalism plays in holding power to account and the critical role that Daily Maverick plays in the future of the South African democracy. So the program with FT Strategies and the Google News Initiative really helped us at a time when we started to look a bit more critically about how we should be using data in our newsroom and in the commercial side of the business.
They conducted a series of interviews with stakeholders at Daily Maverick to establish what needs the organization had and the project that would best suit us. We then arrived at deciding to do a project that had two approaches. We were going to do a reader survey to better understand our reader needs, and we were going to deep dive into our newsletter data to understand how that engages with how our readers move across our funnel.
In just under 3 weeks, we received over 2,900 responses to our reader survey.
Daily Maverick's funnel starts out with a broad base of our readers and then makes its way down to our voluntary membership program, Maverick Insider. And the key findings from the work that we did with FT Strategies and Google News Initiative was gaining a better understanding of how our readers move from the top of that funnel down into our Maverick Insider program. What this data showed us is that there was an opportunity for stronger messaging on our site to drive registrations through readers who only access Daily Maverick through the website, rather than moving to that middle stage of the funnel through newsletters. Off the back of that, we've re-strategized some of our communication strategies on the site, and this has allowed us to increase our acquisition rate through the site from 10 to 15% to around 25% following the program.
We also know that 59% of readers come to us as a primary source of news, which we didn't know before, which opened up an opportunity for us to start thinking about expanding our news offer to more breaking news.
One of the key benefits of working with FT Strategies and the Google News Initiative was having access to the wealth of knowledge and experience that they brought into compiling a survey in terms of how you structure questions, how you improve response rates, gave us some incredible insight that we were able to take into surveys that we run going forward as a business.
Hi everyone, my name is Alet. I am the Audience Development Manager at Daily Maverick, and I come to you all the way from sunny Cape Town, as you said, although it's not nearly as sunny there yet as it is here. I am here today to speak to you a little bit about our audience strategy, our broader audience strategy. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a break from AI, although I might touch on it towards the end. But what we'll be looking at today is how our focus on audience has really driven growth at Daily Maverick over the last 2 to 3 years. So a little bit more about Daily Maverick for those of you who don't know. We are an investigative and long-form journalism site. We were launched in 2009, so we're still fairly young. We have just over 100 employees now, and we've really expanded our offer in the last few years to much broader than just the investigative and long-form stuff. We also do breaking news, as was mentioned in the presentation just now. We do business, lifestyle, sport, and then we're also very proud to say that we had the first dedicated climate change desk in Africa. And we also have a dedicated social justice desk that covers those stories that we all know are very important to the social fiber of our country, but that doesn't really get the attention it always deserves. It's not that sexy. It's not stories that, you'll lead with on the front page. So we have just over 9 million unique monthly users now, and I'll show you just now how we got there, of which 580,000 have registered profiles on our site, so we know who they are, we have their email address, they come back to us to read our journalism. And then 26,000 of those are Maverick insiders, and they're our special supporters group, as we call them. Daily Maverick has very strong philanthropic roots. We believe that quality news and journalism should be freely available for everyone to access, regardless of whether they're able to pay or not. So we don't have a paywall, and our founders were very serious about stating that in public, that we will never have a paywall. Instead, we have voluntary memberships. Our members support us financially to the amount that they can afford. We have a sliding scale, and there are some benefits connected to that. But when we do research, when we survey our insiders, they tell us, we don't really support you for the benefits. We support you because we believe in the cause. We believe that the journalism that you do is vital for the survival of South Africa's democracy. So you can give us any benefits you want. We're very grateful for them, but we will support you regardless. And then we were also crazy enough to launch a print paper in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. It's a weekly paper, and it's got a circulation of just over 10,000 readers a month, which makes us just a little bit bigger than the Mail and Guardian now is, which used to be the flagship Sunday or weekend read in South Africa. So that's who we are, and as I said, we were only launched in 2009, so we're fairly young, and when I joined only almost 2 years ago, I very distinctly still got the feeling that the company or the business was in startup mode, everyone kind of doing everything, making do with as little as possible resources, small teams, and very heavily invested in the journalism, not so much in the supporting structures around the journalism. There was like the reader revenue team existed, but outside of editorial, that was basically the biggest team. There wasn't really HR, there wasn't really marketing, one or two people in marketing, and that still is the case, that by far the largest investment is in the newsroom. But that's changed a little bit as well over the last few years. So what you see here is a graph of our growth since 2019. Daily Maverick is the red dotted line there, and you'll notice there where there is this thing no. Anyway, there in the first quarter of 2020, you'll see that there was a nice bump, a bump that everyone more or less experienced. That was the COVID bump, when everyone flocked to news sites because they needed credible information and journalism to tell them what's going on. Is there a vaccine? Can they take ivermectin? That type of thing. And then everyone kind of plateaued. Some publishers came down again, but as you can see, we kept growing, and we basically doubled our audience since the start of 2019, more than double, to be honest, to where we're now at around 9 to 10 million monthly users that visit us. At the same time, and this is a statistic we're very proud of, we have one of the highest retention rates in the world for our insider program. So again, Daily Maverick is the dotted line there, and for so what the line shows you is that during the first 3 years of their relationship with you, what percentage of readers are still with you? And 83 or almost 84% of readers that joined the Maverick Insider program are still with us after 3 years, compared to the global benchmark of about 27%. So we're very proud of that, and we believe that it's a testament to not only to our members who are incredibly loyal and passionate about the work that we do, but also the engagement that the engagement work that we do with them. So why do we think we've seen growth when others have stagnated a little bit? There's been a global trend towards news avoidance, and it's something that we also battle. But despite that, we've seen this incredible growth. As I said, during this growth spurt we had starting in 2019, the team realized that the company or the organization was starting to really grow out of its baby shoes, and that it was time to kick things into second gear a little bit, and that there was a realization that the growth would happen. Our journalism was good. We had invested in the newsroom, so the growth would happen, but we wanted to grow in a way that was strategic and that was true to our vision and our mission. So we realized that we needed to put a framework in place, something that contextualizes this vision and this mission. Because by show of hands, who of you can tell me what the vision and the mission of your organization is off the top of your head, right? Zoe, well done. I mean, it's something we often put a lot of effort in. We get everyone together to brainstorm, to talk about what it is that's going to be our vision and our mission. And then it goes up on a board, and everyone's very proud of this. And it's the thing that we kind of showcase to everyone. But how does that at the end of the day relate to what we do on a daily basis in our business, in our organization? We needed something to kind of frame this growth and to provide clarity, not only to the newsroom, but also to our readers about what we stand for and what it is that we aim to do at Daily Maverick. And so the first tenet of our plan was to be more strategic and set better goals, because that's another thing that newsrooms do really well, right? There are always great ideas for new projects and new initiatives, and we're going to do this and that. And they're all fair and well, but how do they fit into the bigger plan and strategy, right? How do they contribute to our growth? How do we serve our audiences by doing these things? Not just running around like headless chickens. So we came up with what we call our key themes concept. And this was really part of our project that we called Securing Our Future. The key themes concept has not really been very widely used in a journalistic context, but there have been other publishers that have used it with great success. One example that comes to mind is Tortoise. I don't know if you know Tortoise. They're a UK-based slow news organization, and they use a similar concept with great success, and they've seen great growth as a result. So, okay, so let's look at then the roadmap and this is our securing the future, our future roadmap. So what we started with when we embarked on this journey is, first of all, we all need consensus about what journalism is for, right? What is the basic role we play in our country, in our society? And we had discussions about this, and we did research about this. And we came to a clear understanding that journalism, for us, you could define it differently in your organization, but journalism is at its heart a needs-driven service, right? We're a public service that seeks to enable citizens to make decisions for themselves and for society as a whole. So in South Africa, we believe our journalism needs to do two things. First, our constitution asks us to, or mandates us to protect our fledgling democracy, right? And we do that with a huge investment in accountability journalism. But secondly, our journalism needs to help our audience navigate life. It needs to help them make better decisions, have better conversations, and ultimately aid them in the pursuit of a better life. So these needs then, when we came to this understanding of this is what we want to do, this is what our journalism is for, then we sat down and we said, okay, so what is our vision and what is our mission? And the vision and the mission is, you can go read on our site, because I also can't recite it off the top of my head. But we believe that, when you spend time with Daily Maverick, you come away smarter and you come away knowing better and knowing more. And we do this by what we believe is defending the truth. So after we established what journalism is for, we established what our vision and our mission is. What most organizations do then is they leapfrog to the sections and the various teams, right? And they tell the teams, okay, now you are the news editor of this newsroom. Now you go and decide what the plan and the strategy is for your newsroom, given what our vision and our mission is. And there's almost kind of this gap between company vision and what now you now have to go do that. And then you're faced with the realities of everyday news, right? The news agenda is just going and it's nonstop, and you have to make very fast, important decisions about what to cover, what not to cover, often much harder to decide, what not to cover. I only have so many journalists today, but there are 10 times that many stories. So how do I decide what to cover? The vision and the mission only guides you so far, right? So what the key themes basically does is it acts as a bridge between the company vision and the sections or the team's vision and strategy. It sits atop and across all sections and beats. No key theme belongs to a specific team or vision or section. And it helps each editorial team to determine their own vision and strategy and the goals that they choose to follow. So these are the topics that we believe are so important that to our audience's needs, that we actively seek them out, so that so it helps us focus our resources. It focuses our energy and our bandwidth. Overpopulated world, information world, the key themes help guide us. And what it also does, it lets readers know what it is that we as an organization stand for. Readers and all stakeholders, advertisers, whoever we do business with, funders. A large part of our funding comes from philanthropists. This is a way to ground what it is that we do every day with in our editorial teams. And it allows us to be really leaders in our field and in our communities. It allows the teams to, with freedom, cover stories and go into directions that they know is important, because we've already identified that topic or that theme as a key theme, whether society acknowledges it or not, or whether it's getting clicks or not, right? Because the other way you can do it is look at what the data says from your audience and then be guided by that, which is instructive to an extent, but then you can end up chasing stories that get a lot of clicks, but do they really make the impact that you want your journalism to make, right? Because we're not in the entertainment business, we are in the journalism business. There's a different approach. So if I can summarize the reasons why we do the key themes, it's to build new internal capabilities. It helps us also guide or know where to hire and where the gaps are in our editorial armor. If we have decided that education and job creation is a very important key theme, do we have someone that can cover education properly? Or is it being covered by everyone, in the newsroom, and no one that really has a depth of knowledge that can cover it properly? So it aids in our design for new editorial areas. It provides big picture focus for the teams to go ahead and to go and create with confidence. So there are various approaches to decide on what your key theme should be, right? One approach is to look at the problems to solve method. So which are the biggest issues, the problems our audience face, and then to try to solve, try to solve those problems for them or help solve those problems for them. So during our research, we looked at a global Ipsos poll, and we found that, or that showed that coronavirus was one of the top 5 global concerns. That was obviously a year or two ago. But then also when we looked at South Africa, we saw that unemployment was actually a much larger source of concern for South Africans than COVID at the time. At 60% of South Africans said that unemployment was a big area of concern for them. So what are the problems that we can solve for our audience? Another way of looking at that is, what do we worry about most as a society? Hello? They'll come along now. What do we worry about? So if we know our audience is very worried about climate change, then we know we can dedicate resources to covering climate change to help them better understand that. We saw, for instance, with this brand map research that they did, that people worry about crime and corruption and our economic sustainability, but Daily Maverick's audience specifically worried about climate change. So that was something that we identified in our research and had to consider when we were trying to come up with these key themes. Another way to approach this is what we spend most of our time and money on, right? So as a country, as a newsroom, as individuals, what is it that we spend our resources on? Then we looked at the national budget. We saw that we spend, can't remember how much a percentage went to health. This much went to education. Learning and culture, health, those were big parts. A big part of the budget goes to that. A big part of our national budget goes into education. But are we covering education? What do individuals spend their money on? So that's another way that we could look at it. So we did our research and we considered all of these things, and then we went back to our teams and we said, considering all of this, we had discussions about that. We said, tell us what you think the key theme should be, right? Because it's all good and well if the leader of the organization or our CEO or our editor went and said, we did all this research, these are our key themes, this is how we're now going to divide our work. It had to be an organic process. It had to come from bottom up, right? So we asked the entire organization, journalists, support staff, tech people, everyone participated. We were divided up into groups, and each group had to come up with 4 key themes. They then had to present the themes that they suggested to the steering committee or the leadership who drove this project. And they then consolidated everyone's suggestions, and these are the key themes we came up with for this year. Age of accountability, safety and belonging, a sustainable world, education and job creation. So you'll see these are very broad, right? And it's purposely done so because it's meant to accommodate different sections, different beats. And from this, then now the different teams and sections can go and formulate their own key themes or their sub-themes that they can. So under age of accountability, a team and the business team might say they are going to be looking at fiscal spending as a priority area this year. Or under a sustainable world, our climate desk can say we are going to be looking at our energy crisis in South Africa, which is a big one. So these are our key themes. if you identified a problem as a key theme, so what a lot of people came up with is our problems, right? The problems we wanted to solve: poverty, unemployment, corruption, crime. These are our problems. But what we then did is we flipped it around. Instead of focusing on the problem, let's make the solution the key theme. So instead of saying unemployment, we're focusing on education and job creation. Or poaching becomes part of a sustainable world. So applying this lens really then helps direct all of our efforts on a day-to-day basis. Because as I said, now the business editor can go to his team and says, let's decide which are the sub-themes that we're going to be focusing on if we keep these key themes in mind. And so each team can individualize it. So with all these things in place, we now have our key themes in place. We also knew that we had to do something to help understand our audiences better. So one of the biggest criticisms of journalism these days is that the disconnect between newsrooms and the people that they claim to serve, right? So there are a few feedback loops. And you often see this in research about younger audiences, young people saying that, news publishers don't address my needs really, so I'm not interested, I'm just going to get my information off social media. But it's also true of older users and more traditional news users that they don't feel that their needs are being met. So now that we've done our research and we've identified the key areas in our society, the next step naturally is to involve our audience. So there are many ways to define audience engagement in terms of audience data, and different publishers have different ways of doing this in line with their business priorities, their editorial strategy. But at Daily Maverick, we take a very practical approach to it, and we consider it the extent to which our audience plays a role in our journalism. So as I said, we have two roles. We believe we have to protect our democracy and we have to help our audience navigate their lives. So we have our overarching key themes, but now we have to test whether those resonate with our audiences. Does it make an impact if we measure today how our audience understands climate change? And if we compare it to what they say in a year from now, did we make an impact, right? So we have to be able to measure these. So you can only really truly address or accurately or impactfully apply those key themes if you are in touch with the needs of your audience. So when it comes to engagement, what a lot of publishers do is they say, okay, we have comments. Comments is audience engagement. But then no one actually ever looks at the comments and feeds that back to the newsroom and says, oh, people are asking, they don't understand this issue, or they don't agree with this person's view if it's an opinion or whatever. Or they say Facebook comments, likes, those kind of things, that's audience engagement. Right, but there's no feedback loop. So the audience engagement never gets back to where we produce the news. So there has to be a feedback loop. We believe engagement only happens when members of the public are responsive to the newsroom and the newsroom is responsive to members of the public. So how does this audience loop work? It's fairly obvious. We look at the data, we see this is what people read. This is what people are consuming. We have a team, we discuss that. We then invite audience input. We have a survey. I'll show you how we do it now. And then the results of that survey again becomes part of the data, and we look at the data and we go, okay, this is the story that we have to cover. This is the angle. This is the user need that we're not addressing. We create the editorial content, we measure the impact, and then it all becomes part of the loop, right? So how does this work in practice? And this is where it becomes a little bit more practical. I'm just going to grab. So how does it look like? Or what does it look like? It starts with the data, right? So we look at the data, and a data memo goes out every morning at around 8 a.m. I do that for my sins every morning. And it goes out to all staff, and it tells them headline numbers. These were the big stories of yesterday. This is what people engaged with. This is what was read. This is what wasn't read. So maybe we can, repackage that a little bit or rewrite the headline. But really what the main focus of the memo is what the name says. It's a memo. So it's short notes and it's insights based on the data. So we don't want there a list of articles so that all the journalists can look at it, compare who was read the most and who's the most popular. Instead, we want people to be able to interpret the numbers that they see in the context of our key themes, right? So interwoven in this data memo is our key themes and how a story about months of intensified load shedding that's coming up is part of our key theme of safety and belonging, or age of accountability, because, for whatever the angle of the story is. So we start with the memo. Then based on the data in the memo, we have an audience engagement team of 2. It's not their sole purpose to do this, but it's part of their role, obviously. And one of them is a very senior editor, which obviously helps, because then you have a little bit of muscle behind this project, and it's not just some junior or an intern that's trying to get something done with no support. So the team comes up with questions based on topics based on the data suggests, what the data suggests, and how it fits into our key themes and the sub-themes that the editorial teams have determined. There's a Slack channel especially for this, and this is where we discuss and come up with questions. We formulate an audience question, and then we ask our audience, do they have any burning questions about the power crisis? We have an upcoming interview with the electricity minister. Do they have any questions they want to ask? I mean, this is very simple. This is very straightforward, right? This is not rocket science. But doing this consistently means that we are consistently listening to what our readers are saying, what it is that they want. And then we actually take those questions to the minister. We don't just say we're going to do it. We commit to answer their questions. And we go and we find an expert that's able to answer the questions. So our newsroom, so these are then added at the bottom of articles, any articles, and people can then ask their questions there. Sometimes it's multiple choice, sometimes you can insert a long form question there. And then we also ask for an email address, because then we also register them, right? Email is a proxy for a registration. So they become registered users. So the next time they want to read an article that has the reg wall on it, they can just say, I'm already logged in, and bypass that whole process. So now we've gathered the audience feedback. So now what happens to it? Does it just lay somewhere and gather dust in some spreadsheet? No, we use that feedback and it becomes editorial content because it's part of the loop, right? So now we've created a newsletter especially for this. It's called Your Questions Answered. And the newsletter answers the questions that we said we were going to answer. And it's written by Farrell Hafaji. She's a senior editor in our newsroom. And she writes to our newsletter, to our readers, our newsletter readers. She has a very personable tone and she addresses them directly and she says, hi, this is the questions you had. This is the answers that we could find. These are the answers we couldn't find. She's very transparent about that. But it's very important to show your audience that you have actually gone to the effort to try to find the answers to their questions, right? They've gone to all the effort to actually ask the question, so now you have to answer them. So the newsletter is hugely popular. It's just won the WAN EFRA prize for the best newsletter in the world, I think. It's got about 50,000 people on the list who receive it with an open rate of, I think, about between 60 and 70%. So it's very successful. And we've created other newsletters off the back of this as well that follows the same recipe. And most of these questions that we ask of the audience, or the audience engagement, these questions are in line with our key themes, right? So that we know that we are measuring things that are really important, that we've already identified as really important. So yes, and then lastly, and all of these things really didn't happen one after the other, but more alongside each other. But once you have your key themes in place, and once you have a mechanism to really engage your audience in a meaningful manner, then you can really do data right. Because what a lot of us do is we look at clicks and time spent on page and clicks per session. But what does it really all mean if you don't have a clear goal and strategy and you know exactly what it is that you want to impact? We want to impact, we want to hold people accountable. We want to make sure all South Africans have a sense of safety and belonging. We want to make sure that we have a sustainable world for our children to grow up in. And we want to make sure that there are jobs and that our school system and education system educates people for these jobs. So when we look at our data, this is what we have in mind. And we can see, this is where we are making an impact, or we're not making an impact. We should change direction. So that's really my spiel. And maybe just to touch base with the theme of the conference, and how AI fits into this whole thing. Yes, we use AI. We have a very successful AI project that launched almost simultaneously with the launch, or when everyone realized ChatGPT was a thing. And we employed ChatGPT in this tool because the tool was ready, and we just literally had to plug ChatGPT into it, and it worked out perfectly. But it's a small part of our audience strategy, right? We know that, so we use it for summaries, and it auto-generates summaries. As I said in the beginning, we have very long articles, we have in-depth investigations and long-form journalism, and we know that not everyone reads that. I mean, really, the dirty secret of most publishers is that most people only read like the first 20% of an article, and then they leave. So what we did is we used AI to auto-generate these summaries. And then if you land on the summary, you can also flip through all the other summaries. And it's been a huge success, and we're looking at rolling it out further now. And it's part of our strategy to engage that group of readers who don't want to read a whole long story. They just want to grab the essence of the story and leave again. They're not going to become members necessarily. They're not going to register on our site. So it's not such a big loss for us. We're trying to get them to stay a little bit longer by browsing through these summaries as they come across them. And yes, but the point I'm trying to make is it's a really small part of the audience strategy. And it's something we're experimenting with. It's something that we're certainly very aware of, that it could impact the future of our business. So we're open to experimenting with it, and we're open to trying different things, not necessarily all in the newsroom. Some of it is newsroom products or projects. Others are tools and stuff that any business can use, like someone mentioned transcribing meeting notes, or transcribing video, or creating podcasts or video, or whatever, what have you. But yeah, it forms a very small part of it, and it's very much still in experiment phase. And I find it very heartening to have heard from all the other speakers here today that they're in the same boat, right? We're still kind of experimenting with this thing and figuring out where it's going to take us. But it's good to have those conversations, and I think that's why days like today are so important. But anyway, that's digressing a little bit. Are there any questions about the key themes and any of the stuff that I presented today?
I just wanted to find out, in terms of your data and analytics, do you have proprietary software, or is that just basic, Google Analytics, things that are available to anyone?
Yes, we have proprietary software. We use Smart Octo. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we only got that last year, really, and before that we used Google Analytics, so that's very sufficient. What I do find is that it's very time consuming. If you've ever worked with Google Analytics, now even more so with GA4, right? It's incredibly time consuming. I know this because I had to do a report for our CEO last week, and he asked me for data that we don't have in Smart Octo yet, and I had to go find it in Google Analytics. It took me 4 hours, where Smart Octo would have literally taken me 10 minutes. So it's worth, I would say it's definitely worth investing in some tool if you can.
Alet, it's interesting. I mean, you spoke about the launch of ChatGPT, and you launching your software at the same time. It's very interesting, and I'd like you to discuss that a little more, because you've opted to go with ChatGPT. Okay, I'm not having a good day. But whereas others, other news organizations have actually blocked ChatGPT completely from scraping their sites, from use within the newsroom in general. So how's that working for you?
Yeah, I think we're very much in the same boat as everyone here today. We're still also working on our guidelines, but there's also 2 ways of going about it. The one is allowing everyone to experiment with it. Every journalist, every editor, every producer, using ChatGPT in their own work environment and context, and then using the tool as in a tool, as a product. So we are very aware of its limitations. We try to make up for those limitations in the building of the tool. Whereas, if a journalist's just using ChatGPT on their own for whatever reason, you don't necessarily know what the process that they're taking taking the copy through when it lands on the editor's desk, who's written it, what checks did it go through, that type of thing. So we're obviously very aware of the limitations of ChatGPT, but I think the approach is, and certainly with the summaries page that we've built, is we're not asking it to create content for us. We're asking it to take our content and summarize it for us, right? So we're not asking it to generate original content and publishing that. It creates the summary. The summary still gets checked by a sub-editor after time they rewrite the whole thing, but the first draft is given by ChatGPT, or our summary engine, as we call it. And then, only then it goes onto the site. So as Charlie also said, human in the loop, incredibly important for all these kinds of tools. So it's still in test phase, actually. So you can find it if you go, it's at the moment, if you click on a story in Twitter, a Daily Maverick story that's in the top 10 read, it'll take you to the summary vision, or if you just go to Daily Maverick /summaries, you'll also find it.
Thank you, Alet. Very interesting presentation. My 2 key attraction areas, the fact that you have a loop where you keep touch with the audience and there's feedback. And so I was sitting here and wondering and saying, traditional newsrooms, you commission the audience research and then, okay, you know what they want. And it takes, again, another time, maybe because of budgetary issues or so. And I also took note when you say you need to have some clear meaning of when you have a digital platform. For example, a show, popular one, Daily News Roundup with Nina. You have all these likes, the shares, and what does that actually mean, and how do you plow back that so that you can enrich a program, or you can start a particular product to complement what you are saying? So I'm actually thinking now to say, during diary meetings, maybe somebody needs to start saying, what are our audience saying in terms of news? And not only when it is maybe, because even the news sources, they are our customers. Okay, when it comes to revenue generations, yes, the advertiser complained about this, then you run quickly, but I think it should be the same in terms of news itself. Yes, they are not there to tell us what to do, but on the other hand, it's a given, it's partnership. News has really transformed. It's a collaborative effort. So if one client in terms of news source or being an audience is not happy, you're likely to chase that away. But thank you very much.
No, you make such a good point, and that's the job of someone with my title, right? Someone who does audience development or audience engagement. My job is to be the voice of the reader in the newsroom. So with everyone at the table discussing what's important for people to know, why shouldn't the reader also be represented there, right? It's at the end of the day who the product is for. So it'd be silly to not have someone there to also give input from the reader's side, right? So that is having someone there to be that voice is incredibly important. And if it can't be a person, you know, that's what your data is also for. But then you need someone to interpret that data, or and that's what our memo is also for. You know, to tell people this is what the data shows us. And they're not just giving them numbers, because editors can understand those numbers. They're not stupid, but they don't have the time to sit and to think about it, right? Time is such a scarce resource in a newsroom that you can't expect the interpreters of the data. They want the interpretations already. So my job is to interpret the data, give them the insights from the data to be able to make informed decisions when they go into their newsroom meetings. So yeah, another thing that I think is worth investing in. Lots of questions, that's always a good sign.
How do you, Alet, engage the advertisers in your audience development? Because I believe they are a big part of the audience, and especially your role.
That's a very interesting question. So traditionally, you know, there's this Chinese wall divide between commercial and editorial, and I think that's still there to an extent, except that the commercial team is also very informed about that audience data. So they can take those insights to advertisers and say, you know, this is what readers are engaging with. This is not, advertisers still have their own ideas about where they want their ads to go. They don't want their ads to go, for instance, on political stories or, you know, stories about murder or rape or whatever. You can understand that. Luckily, I think our revenue model is of such a kind that we are not that dependent on the advertisers. I mean, obviously, we don't want to anger anyone or turn anyone off, but we've got a very even split between reader revenue, advertising, and donations. So to be honest with you, I have no insight into how the advertisers react to the data. We have a data analyst on the commercial side who deals with specifically that, and she gives them the feedback. But I haven't heard any complaints, so yeah. I don't think I'm actually answering your question, but I don't really know enough about it, to be honest.
I'm the head of marketing and sales at the Namibian newspaper.
Okay.
And this is very, very interesting for me because we need to see that the revenue does not drop further. That I perhaps approach you and you get me in touch with your people.
Definitely.
For some conversations to have.
Yes, definitely.
Perhaps for some ideas which we could implement also here.
Yes, yes, I would love to. We just today have a new hire in our head of marketing, so she won't be able to tell you much. It's still only our first week, but in our commercial team, I'm sure that there's someone who would love to talk to you there and give you some insights into how. I can say with this data memo that I send every morning, it goes to the entire organization. So commercial also gets it, so that they're on top of what's going on in the news. They're on top of what's performing well. How we're doing in terms of our key themes. So everyone is at least informed. What they do with that data, I'm not sure.
Ultimately, content is king, so we always have to keep that at the back of our mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, I think we have one more question here. Oh, sorry, Zoe, you go. You can stop me. I can go on all day.
I mean, based on what you were saying, Alet, and thank you very much. I mean, you have quite a big newsroom, about 100 people. And one gets the impression that you have the resources to be able to employ a full-time audience engagement manager, which is not the case I mean, most of the newsrooms, in the region. I mean, Daily Maverick is certainly a leader in that aspect. And then on top of that, there's such a close link economically between Namibia and South Africa, where South Africa, I mean, in terms of trade, and also then in terms of news, South African companies being major traders and probably being very dominant advertisers in our market. It complicates things for us very slightly, because I don't know to what extent South African commercial businesses are actually willing to spend their advertising dollars in Namibia, which is a small market. So, I mean, our challenges are slightly different.
Yeah, I hear you.
But it's very interesting to hear that you've got such a focused approach to audience engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, I know it sounds very glamorous. We have all these people doing all these jobs, but it's really only me. I have one person. I have an assistant that I hired earlier this year. So, I mean, if you look at something like the New York Times, I think they have like 120 people in audience development and 120 people in newsletters. This was 2 years ago when I last heard. So, we also consider ourselves small. I know it's still more than what a lot of others have, but I can tell you that at News 24, which is actually a much bigger organization, when I was there, the editors were expected themselves to look at the data and do monthly reports and report on how their stories are doing, etc., etc. So there are ways around it. It all depends on, your priorities.
We have another question from the chat from our colleague Stephanie Duckstein. Thanks for the presentation, Alet, and congratulations to the successes your team has achieved. You spoke about in your reporting, you go beyond the problem and focus on solutions. Is that something that resonated well with your readers?
Not necessarily when we were formulating those key themes, although we do know now from our audience research that people are more and more inclined to look for solutions journalism, right? It's that news fatigue I spoke about a little bit earlier. People are tired of hearing about how bad everything is all the time, and they want something more positive to read, if it can't be positive, at least neutral. And we see this especially among younger readers. So yes, that's incredibly important for us to also be able to frame things in terms of what the solution is. And then I know that there's been an investment in getting expertise on how to actually do solutions journalism, because it's actually become a whole new format and form of journalism. And we've had some people in to coach our teams about how to do solutions journalism properly. Yeah.
All right. I think we have come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, Alet, and thank you to our audience as well.